What if there was a safe space for you to explore artificial intelligence? What if there was a team of friendly professionals waiting to help you examine what you can do with AI in your courses? Welcome to the world of what if.
Hello everyone, thanks for being here today. Again, my name is Chad Feyas. I'm an instructional designer here at the Center for Online and Continuing Education, and we'll be talking today about AI for self-directed learning. And I'm excited to dive into this with you because if you're like me, when we think about generative AI and some of the generative AI tools, we think about just that, what they can generate for us, whether that's generating a quick answer or maybe generating a diagram or a visual of something. And in that sense, the AI kind of is taking on the role of, in some cases, a genius who can spit out encyclopedic knowledge in like 0.3 seconds, or sometimes an artist. We joke, of course, more often the AI is taking on the role of that really eager intern who is very fast and usually gets most of what you were looking for, but not always. One thing I've been experimenting with, I think is worth thinking about, is how can we use AI in some other ways? And particularly, how can we use AI to help us learn? And so in this sense, rather than some of those other roles, how can we get AI to take on the role of more like a tutor or a guide or even like a coach, right? What would it look like if instead of just giving me an answer, if AI and certain tools could help me sort of formulate my own answer, sort of form my understanding, get deeper in certain concepts, or maybe walk through step by step in how I can actually learn to do something. And so that's one thing I've been sort of playing around with lately, and one thing that I want to share with you today. If you joined us last Playground, you'll remember that the one and only Shannon Deere walked us through sort of an introduction and a few of the tools within Google Gemini, which is one of our endorsed AI tools here at Florida Atlantic. And I want to actually pick up in Gemini again and show you even more tools. If you didn't get a chance to see that, I wanted to mention, definitely go and check that out. You can watch that. And in fact, you can watch all of our previous Playgrounds on our YouTube channel, on our YouTube playlist. So I'd encourage you to go back and reference that. But as far as the agenda for today, what I want to do is I want to show you a tool that can help us do this sort of understanding, going deeper in the concept and sort of wrapping our minds around a concept. Then I want to show you a tool that's going to help us sort of refresh or reinforce that concept with some different, in some different forms. And then thirdly, I want to show you a tool that's going to help us practice and actually apply that concept in a sort of real world scenario. Okay, so but before I jump into Gemini, how do we get to Gemini? There's a couple different ways that we can access Gemini as well as all of our other tools. But a really easy one to remember is if we simply go to fau.edu/AI. And this takes us to this page that is sort of the central place for all things artificial intelligence at Florida Atlantic. So there's a ton of resources on this page. I'd encourage you to check this out, poke around here. I'm going to go to AI tools, and here's a list of the tools we have at our disposal. And here's the third one, Gemini by Google. If I click Explore Google Gemini, it's going to give me some particular information about Gemini, different use cases. It's going to give me some sample prompts. I'm just going to go here to launch Gemini. And so here we have our basic Gemini workspace. You'll see in the top right, I'm logged in. You may be prompted to log in if you're following along with me. Here I'm logged in with my fau.edu email. And so I know I'm using my secure university account within Gemini. And if we expand this menu on the left side, you'll see we have our recent chats as well as our gems, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later. But for now, I'm going to collapse that. And so to kind of jump into this, for example, I was thinking about kind of what I would want to use as an example. I was doing some cleaning around the house a few weeks ago, and I came across my old, like circa 2010 DSLR camera, right? My Canon Rebel. It was like the camera that everyone bought on Black Friday. I was cleaning and I was like, oh, I forgot that I had this. And I busted out my old SD card, charged up the battery. And of course, I proceeded to play around with the camera like the rest of the day instead of cleaning my house, which is just a little bit about me. But it sort of prompted me, I like photography. I'm a complete novice, not really experienced at all, never done anything like really professional in any sense with photography, but I enjoy the idea of it, and it's always good to brush up on skills. So I was thinking, maybe I'll use photography as sort of our example for today. So I'm just going to put in a simple prompt to Gemini here. I want to take better photos with my DSLR camera. Simple as that. So if you're familiar with Gemini or really any AI tool, you're probably going to think that this response sounds, to be expected, right? It's going to give me a couple different tips. It's going to give me some information on what it would look like for me to take better photos. So I need to make sure, okay, so it's explaining this concept of the exposure triangle of these three different settings: aperture, shutter speed, and ISO. It's giving me some information about those. If I scroll down here, it's also going to talk me through what I should consider about how to frame the photography, the subjects in my photo, so the rule of thirds, etc. Thirdly, maybe some actually, camera settings that I could adjust or different shooting modes and things like that. So this is pretty expected. But what if instead of just seeing this answer, what if I wanted to like really dig into these concepts? Like what if I really wanted to understand what aperture means or what ISO means and how it actually how I could manipulate it to actually, make changes to the way my photos look. For that, I'm going to use a tool called guided learning. So guided learning, I'm going to go here to just a new chat just for the sake of the example. Guided learning is a tool within the main Gemini workspace. You just go down here to tools and it's the first tool we click on. So now we see guided learning is up. And now I'm ready to start using this tool. And let's enter the same prompt we just did. I want to take better photos with my DSLR camera. Okay, so again, the same prompt. Let's take a look at how this tool works. Just a sec, ... Okay, so it starts off, that's a fantastic goal. As all AI tools, very positive, very encouraging and supportive, which is a good thing. Three most important settings are aperture, shutter speed, and ISO from the exposure triangle. Okay, so check this out. So before we dive into the relationship between these kind of three concepts, which of these would you like to explore first? So the first thing I want to point out about guided learning is it actually lets me sort of have some decision making, have some agency in what I want to focus on. So let's say I was actually already familiar with the idea of shutter speed, but I'm really confused about aperture. I don't need to then filter out that information later. I can actually just focus on what I feel I need to focus on. So let's just start with number one, with aperture. So I'm just going to type in number one. And now it's going to sort of walk me through a guided learning experience about this concept of aperture. So it's giving me some information here. The aperture is the adjustable opening inside of your lens that lets light pass through to the camera sensor. Think of it like the pupil of your eye, okay? So there's some information. And it's also measured in what's called f-stop, so f2.8, f8, f16, etc. So that's some basic information about aperture. Now notice what it did here. What is the relationship between the f-stop number and the size of the opening? For example, does a small number mean a small opening or a large opening? So what's really cool is it's going to prompt me with these questions that help me think about how the information applies. Like instead of just giving me the information, it's sort of going to give me a little bit and then test my understanding. So just for the sake of the playground, what do you think? How should we respond? Is it f-stop giving us a larger number? sorry, the relationship between the f-stop and the size. Does a smaller number mean a small opening or a large opening? What do we think? Large? I'm hearing large in the room. Okay, let's try it. Large opening. You've got it. Great job. Thank you, everyone in the room here. Okay, so that's the part that often confuses beginners, and that's great because you all are experienced photographers now. No, okay, so it's going to give us a little bit more information, and then again here, it's going to continue in this sort of Socratic style question dialogue. And so now it's asking, if you want a portrait where your subject's face is sharp, but the background is blurry, would you use a large opening or a small opening? What do we want to say? Small? Small this time? Great. So let's see what it gives us back. Oh, okay. So this is another thing I wanted to point out. So, sorry, that's a good guess. There was only 2 options, but how nice. But okay, so it's saying it's counterintuitive. And so it's going to give me some more information about aperture. And this is another great thing to point out about guided learning is that it is adapting to me. So if I were to get this correct, it's going to probably feel free to go ahead and move on to the next concept, which I think was like shutter speed. But since I got this wrong, it's going to say, hold on, we need to talk about this concept a little bit more, right? So that's great. Here it's giving me some practice suggestions. Let's put this into practice. It's actually giving me some different things to try while I'm using my camera. Okay, but let's see what it says. Let's think about, suppose you're shooting a portrait indoors, the light isn't very bright. If you use a small f number, you get that blurry background. What is the consequence for the camera's automatically chosen shutter speed? Will it be fast or slow? Okay, so you'll see it did kind of move on to shutter speed. One more thing before, I don't want to spend too much time on this tool because I have a couple of other things to show you. But I'm actually going to go back to a previous one I was working on. You'll see it did feel free to move on. I asked it for an example of something it would look like comparing shutter speeds. And so my last kind of thing to point out about guided learning is that it can actually provide sort of different modes usually of sort of help. So it could provide an analogy or something if I really wasn't getting it. But in this case, it provided this photo. So it was looking at shutter speed. And in this case, I know it's kind of small. In this case, it's a picture of a dog running and catching a Frisbee. And it was explaining that a faster shutter speed there on the left is a real clear image, and a slower shutter speed, the image is blurry. So there's a lot of really great things you can do with guided learning, a lot more to play around with. I'm pretty sort of fresh in using this tool, but I definitely feel I'm going to play around with it a lot more. I see a lot of different applications. Before we move on to the second tool, any questions or anything about guided learning? Okay. The second tool I want to show you, I'm going to go back to our fau.edu/AI pages. The second tool I want to show you is one of my all-time favorites, and that is Notebook LM. Now, I went back, and it's another tool that's listed there. Notebook LM is also a Google AI tool. It's a little bit different from Gemini. The key difference is that with Notebook LM, you get to sort of control or restrict the information that's used to generate the responses. And what we'll see is actually we can generate a lot more than just text responses with this. So this is really helpful if rather than wanting to search, the entire existence of information, you want to really focus in on, say, a particular document or a particular chapter, or even some other sources. So we can click Try Notebook LM. And it takes us to our notebooks. And so these are different collections of sources. If we hit Create a New Notebook, it's going to prompt us to upload a source. Now, I'm going to go ahead and drag in here. I have this chapter on the exposure concepts, aperture, and shutter speed, etc. So I'm going to go ahead and drag that in. And you see it's reading the PDF now, and it's going to go ahead and generate, basically in the middle here, a summary. Now, if I wanted to add more sources, I certainly could. And I think there's technically a limit to how many sources, but it's a very high limit. I've never reached the limit. So we could add, and also you can add not just text-based resources, but you could also add in here a website link, YouTube link, even just a portion of a document that you copy and paste in here. Just for fun, I'll throw in as well, I have this, again, ISO shutter speed and aperture explained YouTube video. We'll just copy the URL and add it in just for fun. See what that gives us. Okay, so now we have those two sources here. And I'm going to go ahead and close our source window just so we can have a little bit more room. You'll see here in the middle, we have sort of a summary of that resource. It's going to kind of basically give us the main points that were in that chapter. And I could go ahead and have a dialogue here about with this dialogue partner about that chapter. But some of the really cool features of this tool are found on the right side here in Studio. So notice we can create an audio overview of these sources. And what that is basically, it's a dialogue between two people. It's like a podcast style conversation explaining and talking about these sources. And so they cover usually kind of the main talking points. And it can be really helpful to sort of, again, if we feel like we have the concept sort of well understood, we can then reinforce that, or maybe just hear the concepts explained in a different way or from a different perspective. So that's really good. We can also create a video overview, which I'm going to show you an example of that in just a moment. But other things as well, mind map, a quiz. If you just click, they start generating down here in the bottom. This can, with all of these, especially the audio and video ones, they do take some time to generate. So it'll probably generate this quiz. I'm going to do a little cooking show magic here and go to another tab from previous where I've generated a video, and I'll just play a quick example. This is a newer feature of Notebook LM, relatively new. The audio overview has been around for a little longer, but the video is sort of similar. I'll just give you a brief sample here.
All right, let's talk about that little green auto mode on your camera. We're going to move right past it because today we are unlocking the real creative controls, the stuff that lets you go from just taking pictures to actually making photographs. So what's the big secret? Let's dive in.
You know the feeling, right? You're out, you see this incredible scene, you grab your camera, you snap the shot, and you look at the back of the screen and just go, meh. It's okay, it's sharp, but it just doesn't have that spark. It doesn't capture the feeling of being there. If that sounds like you, trust me, you're in the right place.
So on auto mode, your camera's brain sees this runner, and its one and only job is to make sure everything is perfectly visible and sharp. And hey, it does a great job. You get a perfect record of what happened. But that's...
Okay, so you kind of get the sense of this video, what it's going to show. It's going to walk me through some different things. It actually created an outline, just to scrub through it here. Created an outline, so one's mastering exposure. It's giving me definitions. This is a really valuable thing. Like if I really want to explore this further, I mean, this is certainly if you're a visual person, a visual learner, I think this has a lot of applications that are worth considering. Let me go back here and see if our quiz had generated. So yeah, I can actually generate like a multiple choice quiz just to make sure I'm really grasping these concepts here. So a photographer wants to capture a fast-moving cyclist at a race, ensuring the cyclist is perfectly sharp and not blurred. According to the text, which shutter speed would be the most appropriate to freeze this action? What do we think? I'll open it back up to the audience. So we want to grab a cyclist moving at fast motion, and it's asking what shutter speed? Yeah, Miguel. Yeah, I believe it's going to be C because that would be the quickest shutter speed. And look, that's right. So it even gives us some feedback here. And I can even go to further explanation. That brings us back over to our chat window. So there's a lot of interactivity within Notebook LM. We could continue exploring even further. Wow, that was a lot of explanation, actually. But there's, like I said, there's a lot more we could do with Notebook LM. But I actually want to move on to our third tool because I'm really excited to show you. So sort of as we're moving through, we've really sort of dug deeper into the concept. We've explored it through some different tools. What if we actually wanted to practice it? What if we actually wanted to use a tool to help us refine our craft of photography? For that, I'm going to go back to Gemini, and I'm going to actually create a gem. Now, what is a gem? A gem, or in sort of more general terms, we can refer to these as bots or chatbot or something. This is basically, a gem is going to be the same sort of Gemini dialogue partner, only I get to really specify and specialize its purpose or its task that it can accomplish. So I'm going to go down here to explore gems. And there's a lot of pre-made gems that are worth looking through. I'm going to click New Gem. And this is where we really get to customize. What do we want? What particular purpose or sort of application do we want this gem to do? And so we can give it a name. I'm going to call it Photo Coach. Because what I'm sort of envisioning is I want to create something where I can actually upload some photos that I've taken and then have this gem, Photo Coach, sort of refine them. Tell me what was good about the photo, what could be improved about the photo, and then how can I actually improve that? What settings do I need to adjust? Like, teach me how to make those adjustments and take a better photo. So that's sort of what I've had in mind. I'm going to go ahead and call this Photo Coach 3.0. The description, I'm just going to write, helps refine my photography. And then we come down to the instructions. And this is probably the most important part, because this is where we tell the gem what to do. These are the instructions for the gem. So I'm going to start off, you are an experienced professor of photography. I'm going to upload my photos. For each photo, tell me the strengths and the areas for improvement. When needed, give me instructions for how I could refine these photos. Now, we could get a lot more technical with the gems, but I'm going to leave it just that simple. Sometimes less is more. So Photo Coach 3.0 has been created just that quickly. And let's test this out. So earlier this week, I went around campus and took a couple different shots of Owsley. So we'll start with a pretty extreme one here that I'm going to drag in. I'll go ahead and submit this, and then I'll open it up. This is a very overexposed, very bright picture. But let's see what it does. So here it's analyzing my photo. This is a great capture of the, it's maybe not super great, but let's see what strengths it identified. Okay, so first of all, the statue is the primary focus of the image. In other words, I framed the owl well in the shot, apparently. Areas for improvement. Major issue, overexposure. Yeah, I don't know that we needed a super experienced, expert to point that out, but it's good that it can sort of recognize that. So it's extremely bright. The sunlight was blowing out the photo. So how to refine? This is kind of where I wanted to see how the rubber meets the road. So change the time of day is one option we could do. Could shoot with better lighting. Here, probably this is what I would do, is adjust the exposure compensation. And so it's actually giving me, here's what it will look like on your camera. It's usually this like plus or minus image. Try setting it to a negative value. And so like if it really is that bright outside, it would then underexpose the whole scene, which then I could always edit later. So this was a great sort of tip, or kind of explanation of how I could refine this. Let's try another one. This one I'll drag in. Same shot. This one's just a little bit blurry. So no, you don't need new glasses. This is intentionally very out of focus. So let's see what it says for this one. Okay, so this appears to be of the same owl mascot statue. Presents different challenges. Okay, so here it's giving me some strengths, and it's telling me that, in this case, the exposure is much better managed. So that's good. We did a little bit better on the exposure. Also, still keeping the owl in the same spot there in the photo. But this time, the major issue is, of course, focus, or lack of sharpness. The most critical area for improvement is focus. The entire image, particularly the statue, is soft and blurry. The statue is clearly a subject, but it lacks the critical sharpness. Okay, so how can we make this better? The technical goal is to always get a sharp focus on the subject, right? So here we could use autofocus. That would probably be a good setting. Check your aperture. So basically, is our depth of field too shallow, etc. So let's try one more. See what it does for this one. Because granted, those two were pretty extreme examples, but let's see how it does with one more photo. Oh no, maybe not. That's my raw photo file. I must have imported the wrong. Oh. Anyways, we'll stick with those two, I guess. But I hope that you can see how this is not only useful for photography, but also could be applied to like a ton of different areas. I also want to mention, sort of as I'm wrapping up, if you have any questions, go ahead and type them in the chat or here in the room. Feel free. But just as I'm sort of wrapping up, to mention that one feature that's available with both the Gemini gems as well as Notebook LM is we now have the ability to integrate these into Canvas courses. So if this is something that you wanted to explore applying in a course, equipping your students with, that's something that's available. I'm going to leave the link to the OIT ticket request for that integration in the links. Were there any questions? Anything I could hit again? All right, well, thank you so much for coming today. We really appreciate you joining us, and we hope to see you next Playground.